Ladies and gents, it is my proud honour to bring you another Warlords of Draenor 5-man dungeon just opened today. This is Auchindoun. Auchindoun has been reborn, and now it is no longer a ruin. It's no longer full of hatred and misery. It is in fact very pretty. Super pretty. The prettiest 5-man we have done so far. Very reminiscent of the 5-man Tempest Keep dungeons, for those of you who never got to do Botanica and Alcatraz and all that kind of stuff. That is exactly what it's like. And upon entering, you get this kind of RP event. Now, at first, I did think that this RP event was unskippable. It's kind of a long walk, taking you through the halls, and then things go badly, and then you've got to try and sort it out. But, luckily, we did wipe a couple of times on the, or once on the first boss, I should say. And therefore, I figured out that you can, in fact, just walk through it and get straight to the mobs, which is very cool. So, without further ado, trash is of no mega concern in this dungeon. There was no real trash packs where I was like, this sucks. This really sucks. We've got things like fixates going on with infernals and all that kind of stuff. But other than that, the trash is pretty much livable. We can live with it. So on to our first boss, the Soul Construct. A dual shield wielding beast of a guy. Very cool boss. Very, very cool boss. Lots of little mechanics going on here, okay? So what this involves is generally the big dude is going to find his place, and you're going to tank him, and he's going to be spawning these orbs around the room. Now, these orbs are particularly difficult to see. If I was going to give any feedback initially, it's that I would love them to be a different colour, especially for Paladin tanks, which I was rocking at the time, is they can't be seen. What you have to do is actually tilt your camera in such a way that these sparks appear along the background. Now, the way you deal with this is they actually spawn on players, and they do a lot of damage. At first, we tried tanking it in the middle, but that actually is kind of a bummer. What you want to be doing there is tanking it around the edge and circling around the room in a grobulous fashion. For those of you who've done Nax Ramis, very similar to that, and that means that you'll be constantly moving away from the melee, constantly moving away from the tank, and that's how you deal with that. It also does a kind of earth shatter. It's very obvious. It's not something you're going to be really worrying about. It's nothing that you're going to, you can't miss it. It's a nice lightning strike. If you've ever done Lei Shen, you're definitely going to be used to this. What he does do is hurl his shield at a player and sticks it into the ground. He drives his shield down into the ground. Every time you see a shield or something stuck in the ground that's a noticeably obvious barrier, that means he's going to do something that means you have to hide behind it. And he does, called Consecrated Light. So as soon as he throws his shield, you're going to get behind this shield, get a nice position there, and he's going to Consecrate Light, which will kill everybody not hidden behind the shield. Very Saffron-esque. A lot of mix and mash going on here from bosses that we've seen before, but that's okay. This is a normal mode 5-man. That's perfectly fine. This is around the 95, level 95 dungeon, or 97, I believe. Very easy. That's it. Rinse and repeat. Now, he is painful. Very painful on the tank. Something to be aware. We did wipe once, and then we obviously went and shot it after that. Other than that, nothing much going on there. It's a very easy iteration. It's an interesting boss. He doesn't need much in the way of changing. I think it's tuned pretty well. Plenty of mechanics that can kill you if you do them wrong. Lots of damage going on that keeps healers interested, and some stuff going on for the tank to keep him interested as well. And again, it feels tuned appropriately. I quite like that one. Moving on from there, we're coming up to the second boss here with some various trash packs. A couple of annoying mobs mixed into these trash packs. Nothing mega. I would definitely watch for the Arbiters who do this charge that cause a pulsing AoE. That's kind of annoying. They're definitely ones to be stunned and killed immediately. But very quickly, you'll move down the corridor and bring on to your next boss, which is the... what's she called? Sarangarh something? Soulbinder Naomi is her name. Soulbinder Naomi. Now, Soulbinder Naomi is a little undertuned for my liking. Overall, I actually found this boss particularly easy. What she does do is actually kind of boring mechanics that, yeah, they're annoying. She has a Mind Spike, which is interruptible. But on top of that, she'll do the Soul Vessel. Again, a pulsing AoE. It's very similar to the first boss. We just had a boss that had a pulsing AoE. And she'll also spawn an anti-magic zone in the center of the room where if you stand in it, you won't die. So it's extremely reminiscent of the first boss. After that, though, she does spawn adds. A combination of the adds that you met in the corridor, which are going to be a combination of the Arbiters, which do a charge, the Mages, which do an arcane bomb, these kind of things. So you'll prioritize the adds very, very quickly to get her down. But other than that, she doesn't do much of anything else. The damage in between Soul Vessel, which is the pulsing AoE, is actually very, very minor. And it works in the way that they intended, I suppose, for Warlords of Draenor, giving healers a chance to top everybody without panicking too much. It does feel like there's not enough going on here for everybody. You're standing in the anti-magic zone, you kill some adds which don't have a great deal of health, move back to her, rinse and repeat over and over. I'd like to see... I would actually just like to see this boss changed. I don't think we needed another pulsing AoE boss after just doing one, which was actually considerably more interesting, I've got to be honest. Moving on, the Hellfires have spawned. The Burning Legion has arrived, my friends. The Burning Legion has arrived. Yes, and we'll have a combination of 3 different things going on here. One is the Tricksters, the Blazing Tricksters, and the Pyromaniac Imps. On top of that, we have the Fell Guards, which have a Stomp Knockback. So these are the 3 combination of ads that you'll fight as trash. They are very prevalent towards the boss. This is basically a nice way of teaching you what each of these ads do in a rather safe environment. And then you're going to move on to the boss. So individually, these aren't very difficult. What you will know is that the Blazing Tricksters cast Conflagrate and cannot be tanked. Cannot be tanked. So Conflagrate, most of you will be familiar with that mechanic, that it'll hit one person, anybody stood near it, it will also chain to them. They can't be tanked, so actually trying to tank them is more of a pain in the ass, because you're likely just to end up conflagged. They just run around mindlessly. Now, the Pyromaniacs have an extremely long cast of a Fell Bolt, which can be interrupted and can be tanked. So they really do need interrupting, okay? They're one of the little imps that can be tanked, get interrupted, which then brings us onto our boss, okay? Our boss is very cool. Azekel, he's something like the Burning Legion Lord of Light or something along those lines. It's a very pretty looking demon, it's got to be said. He mixes and matches a couple of very basic mechanics. Now, this fight isn't actually about him. His melee damage is relatively weak, and basically just does a little bit of a knockback. Now, his structure in the middle of the room serves for a couple of reasons. One, line of sight now becomes an issue. It's a good idea, actually, to make line of sight a thing. But it is a portal. This portal will spawn the same ads that you met in the corridor, similar to that second boss. Yes, again, similar sort of idea going on through this dungeon. This boss is considerably more interesting, though. So what happens here is it's very easy to wipe, as he spawns around 7 ads in total in about 3 waves before he will die. And you have to really prioritize what's going on here, otherwise you end up in a complete goddamn mess, which is why this boss is so interesting. Not only is he spawning huge fires all around the room, but he's then spawning ads in random locations, which could be any one of the 3 random ads. So as I said, Tricksters, they cannot be tanked. And you also don't want to group up on them. What you can tank, of course, is the Fell Guards and the Pyromaniacs, and you can also interrupt them as a tank. So the general idea is the DPS will split off and kill the Blazing Tricksters, usually 1 apiece, because that means they won't chain conflag to each other, while the tank runs around with the healer and tries to pick up all the Fell Guards and the Pyromaniacs. As soon as these Tricksters die, the DPS will then switch back and then work on the Pyromaniacs and then the Fell Guard lastly. And that's about it. Luckily, a wall appears, so the Fell Guard's knockback is not a concern here. A little bit of feedback would be to get rid of that wall. It would be nice to see to get rid of that wall so that knockback is more of a hindrance. It was pretty obvious after the first try, which we did wipe because we weren't prioritizing the ads. We didn't know what the boss was going to do. Remember, we go into these fights always with the dungeon journal switched off. We don't check that. What it was cool, it would be to see that wall disappear. As a tank, it was nice to have this little bit of ad priority picking up style, but I would also like to have been slightly concerned about the knockback as well. That would have made it a little bit more interesting for me, and I think the DPS would have found that a little bit more interesting as well. Once we actually learnt to prioritize the ads properly, this boss died rather quickly. Very coolly tuned for a normal mode, though. Very coolly tuned. He has an appropriate amount of damage, requires some interrupts, requires knockback management, and requires some prioritizing of ads. No complaints from me at all. Now on to the big complaint. It then turns into Sunken Temple, and by that you have to traverse the circular area of the room using these soul portals to kill very trivial mini-bosses. I would like to call them mini-bosses, but they don't do anything of merit whatsoever. It was such an unusual component to add into the dungeon, is this Sunken Temple style of travelling between platforms and killing these rather weak and inferior mobs. It just seemed like a bit of a blockade between actually reaching the last boss, which is Teron Gorfiend, or Teron as he's called now, or Terranor, or whatever he wants to be called. Teron Gorfiend, our final boss of the Auchindoun instance. Easily the most disappointing in the dungeon, I'm sorry to say. This boss is bafflingly strange. One, he has a lot of spells. He has Immolates, Shadow Bolts, Incinerates, everything can be interrupted. So essentially, if you have people who can press kick, you don't take any damage. He also does a Rain of Fire. Now, the Rain of Fire is something that I was hoping to manage as the tank because it seems permanent. His Rain of Fire can be interrupted, but it does seem permanent. And if you don't manage it, I was thinking because they don't despawn, is that the room would fill with it and we'd get much more intense fight as it went on. Doesn't really happen that way. You're going to kill him by the time he's done about 3 and you get a very large space in which to deal with this situation. So there's not a big problem. He does include Chaos Bolt in his kind of enraged form, where it gets silly. If you're going to make an Orc model really big, they're just not designed to look big, and therefore they just look rather silly, to my opinion. Other than that, though, that's just an aesthetic issue. I would certainly like to have seen Rain of Fire, or perhaps he not be so interruptible. His Chaos Bolt maybe is the only interruptible spell. I would probably like to have seen the Immolates and the Incinerates possibly not be interruptible, because it certainly made the fight take way less damage than was reasonable. The worst part about this fight, though, sadly, is just when you kill him. I've never been so dissatisfied in my life, guys, and I'm not sure quite what Blizz was thinking here, as he simply leaps to his death. Yeah, he runs off and just leaps to his death. And that's it. It's really strange. It was a what the fuck moment for the entire group when it actually occurred. I've really no idea what the purpose was behind this. Just to see the guy just run off. And everybody was expecting another phase. We thought this was just another phase, but in fact the reward popped up saying dungeon complete. Perhaps it's unfinished. This is beta after all. This is only the dungeon's first iteration. It'll no doubt go under several changes. But we'd certainly like to see something better than Terran just running away and throwing himself to his doom. Obviously, Terran will probably make a reappearance at some point, but it could be better that he didn't just seem to fall off a bridge and die. There's Auchindoun for you guys. Beautifully pretty instance. Pretty well tuned for normal. A couple of tweaks to a couple of minor bosses would be nice to make the dungeon overall nicer. Especially the second boss. The second boss seems like a very weak combination of boss 1 and boss 3. And in that respect, that makes boss 2 just a trivial waste of time. And obviously, Terran has the issues that I just discussed. There's Auchindoun for you guys. I hope you enjoyed that. I'll see you again. Bye.